And welcome to the Phoenix Suns Solar Panel Podcast. As you can probably tell already, I've lost my voice, but we're here making it through anyway. My name's Tim Tompkins, of course, and joining us, as always, Mr. Greg Esposito.
Hi, my name's Greg Esposito, and we're excited to be here for the Sun Solar Panel. Tim?
And, of course, Dave King, managing editor, Bright Side of the Sun.
Hi, my name's Dave, and I think we're all just going to go into the sexy voices.
Jesus Christ, guys. So we're recording this morning.
We love you, Tim. We really love you.
We're recording this morning, and it was really nice. Prior to us recording, I got to watch some actual preseason basketball, and I don't know about you guys, but normally the off season to me feels like an eternity. But this year, it felt like it was 2 weeks. Like I can't believe basketball's here already.
Oh, come on, Tim. You're the same Tim that a month ago said, "Oh my God, this is so long of an off season. When are we gonna have basketball? This is so late." You did that for 4 straight weeks.
I'm so sick of August.
Late August.
Well, I think that more had to do with having to come up with content for the show when there ain't nothing going on.
But still, you experienced it. The longest off season, I think I remember you saying, and now you're saying the shortest.
I mean, I don't remember saying that, but whatever. There's a lot of things I don't remember saying on this show. But I don't know. I feel like
making it up, but that's okay.
Are you guys surprised it's here already? How you feeling? Basketball's here finally.
I'm more surprised in general that it's October than just that basketball's here. It feels like 2019 is a blur completely. Which is probably because we do this twice a week, and we're talking about a team that's won, I think in total 70 games, and in the 3 years that we've done this. So I think that's in part why it feels like that. But I am so distracted between.
It's shocking. We have done more podcasts than the Suns have won basketball games.
Well, significantly more podcasts than the Suns have won basketball.
Well, even
games.
Not counting the off season. Like if you just go during the season, we've still done more podcasts.
Yeah, and we've shown up more consistently than they have too. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, we have.
I am so distracted by
Kelly Oubre sits out with discomfort in the hand, and yet Tim is right here on the pod with no voice.
And he's got discomfort in the ass because he's got to deal with both of us. Take that as you will, but
please don't.
But I am so distracted by Tim's voice with him in these headsets. It looks like, for those of you listening on the podcast, Tim and I wear these call center headsets. It really looks like he's working at a phone sex line. It's distracting with the voice and the headset. So.
Hey, I do want to say too, we've been talking about our fantasy basketball league. So we're now opening this up to any listener that really wants to get in. You can hit us up at Sun Solar Panel on Twitter. So we are drafting Sunday, October 13th. At 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm pretty sure that is 6 p.m. Arizona time. It's going to be an auction draft. If you're interested in joining, tweet to us at Sun Solar Panel. There's only a few spots left. And again, this is Sunday, October 13th, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you cannot make the draft and you're going to auto draft, do not join the league. That's the only thing about it. No auto drafting on this one. But if you're interested, please hit us up. And we'd love to have you for our fantasy basketball team this year. So one bit of preseason news is TJ Warren, his first game with the Pacers, dropped 30 for the overtime win. I caught a little bit of the game this morning that they're playing first quarter. TJ Warren looks great. Suns fans already all up in arms about what the Suns had to basically give up to get rid of him. How you guys feeling about TJ Warren looking good so far?
So he's scored 30 more points than the entire Suns team put together already, and that's pretty damn good.
Hey, look. Why is everybody overlooking what cash considerations is going to bring to this roster? It really pisses me off that nobody wants to acknowledge that is exactly what this roster needed.
If you throw out cash onto the court, and our players are trained not to step on the bills, and then the other team might slip and fall, and then the Suns get open shots.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what they need. And look, okay. this was a great offseason when you look at it in totality. And sure, maybe they lost the TJ Warren part. And I'm not even, I mean, we're talking one preseason game. I mean, I'm saying in general, maybe along the way, it turns out that was a loss. But in totality, this was an improvement of an offseason. And when you're trying to rebuild the culture, rebuild the locker room, look at these things and try to make sure that you're getting a winning culture. I just think TJ Warren's time here had run out, and I get it. Oh, well, you could have gotten more. I'm pretty sure they probably called and tried to get more than what they wound up doing to get rid of TJ Warren out of Phoenix. I just don't know that there was much of a market, and that, I mean, that could be on everybody. I mean, everybody could look bad because nobody wanted to take TJ Warren in the long run. But overall, this team is better than they were, and I think they're better for the future. And losing TJ Warren may be a loss, but in totality, this whole offseason was a win.
He's a really good player, but I think I can count on like one or two fingers how many games I left the game going, Suns don't win that game without TJ Warren's contributions. I mean, he is a good player. He really is. And I always liked watching him. I wrote years ago that he would not be a good pairing next to Devin Booker on the wing because you need somebody who can play a little bit of defense around him. And now with Kelly Oubre and Mikal Bridges, I didn't want TJ Warren taking their minutes away. So we went into this offseason saying, gosh, there's 4 small forwards, including Josh Jackson, on this team. And which 2 would you keep? And everybody to a man said Kelly Oubre and Mikal Bridges, but there's no way the Suns can accomplish getting rid of the other 2 guys. And they did. Now, it was a slash and burn, sure. Between Josh Jackson and TJ Warren, they gave up assets to get off of those contracts. And if you're looking at maximizing each individual deal, the Suns did not do that. But to Greg's point, the Suns are much better off. You have to look at the total picture. You have to look at the James Jones was not trying to win the transaction war. He was trying to win the offseason and get a good team on the court. And when I was up there at training camp this week, Tyler Johnson, who was here for the second half of last year, and was the one who said, man, every other team, all they know, all you got to do is wait out the Suns to fall apart and you'll win the game. Tyler said it's a completely different feeling this year. Training camp is always optimism city, but he was really clear how different everything was this year.
Well, and the other thing with TJ Warren, too, that, I mean, yeah, he scored 30 in a preseason game, but let's remember that he'll miss 30 games during the regular season. It's almost, you can almost pencil it in that's what happens with this guy. He'll play 50 to 70 games max and not be around. And who knows, maybe that changes in Indiana, yeah. but that's just been the way it has been.
Sake, he plays 82 games.
I do too.
But what's really going to happen, he's got limits, 82 plus playoffs because it's the East. What's really going to happen, though, is the Pacers are going to find out that TJ does have some limitations. He doesn't pass the ball. He rebounds really badly for a forward, for somebody you need rebounds from. And he doesn't do a whole lot. He gets some steals, so his defense metrics, because there's so few metrics on defense, look a little bit better than they really should. He's going to end up as their sixth man. He's going to average about 16, 18 points a game off the bench. He's like basically a 6'8" version of a Leandro Barbosa, except without the 3 or 4 assists a game.
You guys are too low on TJ Warren. I do have a couple of questions, though.
Wait, Tim. Yeah. When I say 16 to 18 points off the bench with a few rebounds, you really think that's too low?
Well, for one, I think he's going to be a starter on this squad. I don't necessarily think that he's going to be I don't think he's going to be a 6-man off the bench. I mean, to your point, when Victor Oladipo comes back, that there might be a possibility that his scoring goes down. But then again, you look at this team. There were times last year the Pacers specifically, where their offense really slowed. And I do think that TJ Warren helps out with that. He's one of the few isolation players that they have, especially apart from Victor Oladipo, that you can get it to him at the nail. You can get it to him at the block. Like he can run, he can get his own bucket. And there's few players in the NBA that can get their own bucket. And those types of players are really valuable. And so I do think that he's one of them. His rebounding is not great. His defensive numbers aren't great. Completely agree. But he's a guy that goes and gets buckets. Like he's a good player. You can use that type of player on your team. For the Suns, it didn't necessarily work out. Personally, I think they probably should have kept him. But, at the same time, they had Kelly Oubre, who they want to sign to a longer-term deal. They have Mikal Bridges, who they're developing, that is probably the small forward of the future for the team. So I get it. But I don't think that we should be so low on TJ Warren to say he's just a 16 to 18-point bench guy at this point in his career.
There's nothing wrong with being like 16 to 18-point bench guy is a huge win out of a draft class from Ryan McDonough. I mean, think about that. I mean, when you compare it to the other talent that was brought in, I mean, that's a good thing. I don't think that's an insult to say TJ Warren will average 16 to 18 points off the bench for a team. I think that's his ideal position too in the long run. We talked about it here, but Tim, would you have rather they kept TJ Warren over Kelly Oubre in the long run? I mean, I
even the short run.
Yeah, true. Over the next 2 years, would you rather they had kept TJ Warren and let Kelly Oubre walk? Because that was probably the reality of it all.
Yeah, I mean, with that, I'm not sure. I guess we'll wait and see. I do think that Kelly Oubre is a better fit for this specific team. TJ Warren, his fit wasn't great. Kelly Oubre can and needs to bring more on the defensive end of the floor than TJ Warren was able to do.
That's a good point. So if you just look at their raw stats, TJ Warren and Kelly Oubre are probably about the same. If I look them up, they might look like mirror images of each other on the raw stats. But Kelly Oubre has much more defensive potential, and Kelly Oubre's energy, his presence around the team, his effect on the team when he does play, he is a dog. He's a dog out there, man. He plays hard when he's on the court. When he's off the court, you forget about it. You just see him in his pretty little clothes and all that, and he looks like he's the soft as tissue paper. But when he's on the floor, he is a tough player, and that energy, that presence, is what really makes a difference for this Suns team. So even though the bottom line stats, the actual just points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, they're almost mirror images of each other. I have a huge preference for Kelly Oubre over TJ Warren.
One thing some people in the chat are bringing up too that I didn't bring up is the durability issue. I mean, TJ Warren, just because of the way he played, constantly injured. I think sometimes those injuries might have dragged out a little bit more than they needed to, especially last season. But there is a factor in that where sometimes your best asset is as a player is simply being available to play.
Well, and he was a weird dude with some of that stuff. Like I think it wore its course, and he and the Suns were at the end of their time together. I don't think he really wanted to be here. I don't think they really wanted him here. So sometimes that's a big factor in it as well, in just moving on from somebody.
Yeah, no, completely true. So
I just want to close out by saying I'm not a TJ Warren hater. Of course, people who are haters always say they're not haters. I get it. So you can think I am if you want to, but I really like TJ Warren as a player. I just don't think he was the right fit for the Suns, and I'm okay with how they got rid of him, the way they got rid of him. They didn't have to take back any money. These rumors that they could have gotten more for TJ Warren would have required the Suns taking back money. And
in this case, they did take back money, but just the cash, which is awesome. They didn't have to take back bad contract. They just took back. They just got cash in general, so that's a win.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Your favorite player on the team, Greg, is cash consideration.
Look, it's a running gag.
That's a big. Yeah, I know. It's a big dig at Robert Sarver, and he deserves it. So I get that.
Shout out, I want to thank a couple of supporters of the show. First, I want to thank Rip93 Ford, who is watching in the YouTube chat, who just donated to the show. Thank you so much, man. If you want to join the Fantasy Basketball League, hit us up on Twitter. Give me your email. And I also want to thank my supporter of the show, of the podcast specifically who hit the support the show button. Brian Stewart. He made the $10 option. Of course, you can always do the 1, the 5, or the 10. If you do the $10 option, I'll personally send you some Sun swag. I sent some stuff out last week. A couple of listeners tweeted that out if you want to kind of see what some of the stuff is. But Brian, do me a favor, hit us up, Sun Solar Panel. Let me know your address, and I'll get that out to you. And thank you so much for your support.
I really
Brian
hope that
Stewart, I'm looking forward to you helping out with Brightside Night again this year. And we'll try to get you some special stuff for that as well. Brian Stewart is a great supporter of all things Suns and Brightside and solar panels. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. I really hope that RIP 93 Ford is a dude that just sold a really crappy 93 Ford and donated the $5 that he made off of it to us. So thank you, guys. We appreciate your support.
If he only got $5, he did not maximize his assets, and he's just like another Suns.
He traded 2 second-round picks with that Ford as well to get that $5. So.
But he got the $5 cash consideration.
He did, and it all comes back to that. So.
So, Dave, I was on brightsideofthesun.com, and I was reading an article that you had put up post training camp, and there were a couple things that stood out to me, and I wanted to kind of get your take on it. I read your follow-up paragraph to it, but it seemed like maybe you had thought a couple of things too. And the quote is, the guard groups were interesting at the end of this practice. You had a Kobo, Jared Harper, Javon Carter, and other young guards, including Cameron Johnson, while Ty Jerome, I'm not reading well, worked in a foursome with Devin Booker, Tyler Johnson, Ricky Rubio. When I first saw that, I thought to myself, yeah, they're putting the players that are going to play with the players that are going to play, and it makes sense. I mean, you see that a lot in practices all over, from going from elementary school when they're getting into sports all the way up. That's kind of what they do. Do you have any takeaways from that?
Yeah, I was only there the one day, so it's quite possible they switch it up every single day. I don't know if the coaches put those foursomes together or if the players did just because they hang out and they like each other. I really don't know, but I thought it was quite interesting. I asked a couple of people who were up there for the week, and they said don't read much into it. It's not that big of a deal, but I kind of thought it was a big deal. I mean, they've been talking up Ty Jerome all week. Devin Booker talked up Ty Jerome a lot, 2 different times this week, and not to me, but to Evan Sidery with Brightside and Locked on Suns as well. So I think that Ty Jerome has made an impression. Does that last beyond training camp? We don't know. We really don't. But if you're really looking at hierarchies and stuff, Elie Okobo is not there with the top 4, and neither is Javon Carter and all that. So those other guys were shooting by themselves in their little group. Same thing with Frank and Dario. Frank and Dario were shooting together, rotating in and out of taking threes and free throws and different angles. And then the other backup big men were on a different court shooting together as well. So I tend to go toward it looks like Ty Jerome is the 4th guard right now on the team. Doesn't mean he'll stay there through the end of preseason, but I think right now he is the 4th guard.
When I heard that foursome, I thought, that's an attractive foursome. It was the initial thought when I read that. But no, I think it's encouraging because Ty Jerome, it sounds like he's coming in as advertised, right? He's coming in as a guy that is mature, understands what his limitations are, but also what he's good at, and he's just going to get in there and do his thing. And every quote that I read was he's just picking up where he left off in the NCAA tournament with Virginia, and that's encouraging. That's why James Jones drafted Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson, because they were guys that came in ready. They were guys that were mature. They had high basketball IQ, and what you expect is when a guy like that comes in, he's not going to be overwhelmed by the moment. He's not going to be overwhelmed by the idea of being in the NBA. He's going to come in and he's going to perform, and it sounds like he's done that through the first week of this team being together, and that's encouraging.
So about Cam Johnson real quick. I thought it was interesting, and I wasn't there for this particular interview, so I didn't hear his voice, but I talked to Dario Saric on Monday on Media Day, and I got the impression that he's a straight shooter. He'll say what's on his mind, and he isn't a fan of platitudes and stuff like that. And then 2 days later, he says in one of the little post-practice interviews with the scrum that he really likes Cam Johnson, and he was sure that Cam Johnson would be a part of the regular rotation after a couple of days of training camp. And again, grain of salt, big grain of salt. Throw the entire salt shaker over your shoulder. This is just training camp, walkthroughs. No one's playing full speed. So anyone who, if you're worried about their ability to keep up with NBA players, you don't know it yet. Nobody knows it yet. But Dario really liked how Cam played, and this is Dario's 4th year in the league, and he sounded pretty confident that Cam would be is a rotation caliber player. And then other guys talking about Ty Jerome. I mean, these guys they don't have the highest ceiling at all, but they definitely can be functional and good NBA players. We'll just see if it's this year or not. But I would caution everybody to use a grain of salt, a big grain of salt, and wait throughout the preseason to see what happens. A year ago, we thought Shaq Harrison was going to be the starting point guard of the Suns.
Okay. Well, I mean, still pissed about them letting him go. A couple of things.
But he's not a point guard. The thing is, he did play for the Bulls, the other worst team in the league, and he played mostly wing for them. And the Suns didn't need him as a wing player last year. So he is a guy, spirit-wise, intensity-wise, would be missed. But the Suns have that now in Javon Carter, and we'll see if he gets on the court.
So watching the Pacers and the Kings preseason games, their starters played a little over 30 minutes, which is, I think, a little bit unusual. But then I got to thinking, when we're watching the Suns preseason games, are we going to see that kind of minute total for the starters, especially given that this is, largely a group that really needs to start to gel together? They haven't played with Ricky Rubio before specifically.
I doubt that Ricky Rubio is going to play that kind of minutes coming off of FIBA, where he played a lot of minutes to win that title and that MVP. There, I think they're probably going to be more judicial with how much he plays. I think the other factor in that Indy and Sacramento, aren't they? I mean, they're playing in a foreign country, correct? I haven't paid a whole lot of attention.
Yeah, they're playing in India.
Yeah, so I'm sure the NBA was like, hey, please put your best foot forward to show off our league, since we're playing in a country that Adam Silver mentioned earlier this week that he'd like to consider starting a pro league there in the next few years. So I think that probably plays a factor in why you're seeing so many of their starters play minutes too.
I would still expect the Sun starters to play 20 to 24 minutes. That would be the expectation that I would have, half the game. I think Monty would probably have that kind of minutes limit on his starters, and then because he'll want to go 15 deep in those preseason games, at least 13, if not 15 deep. That's generally what you do because you're trying to round out the end of the roster and the end of the rotation. So we're going to see a lot of the young guys. If we don't see a lot of Jalen LeCue, I think that's a hint that he's not ready for the NBA. There's been a couple of hints this week that Jalen is a great athlete, but he's still trying to figure out the game. So he's not like day one fitting in as a just turned 19-year-old. Hey, surprise, surprise, 19-year-olds aren't quite ready for the NBA. What do you know? Shocker. So he might fade in to the background a little bit while we see more of Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson and Sheck Diallo and guys like that. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But 20 to 24 minutes is what I'd expect. The Suns' first preseason game is Tuesday night.
So as Dave goes and pauses his mic and clears his throat, we do have a listener who wanted to see. That's really all for my podcast editing. So
I was concerned he's dying, but you can go that route too. That's fine.
So we had a listener that wanted to see the pop sockets that we're sending out, and so Greg, can you see this on the camera?
Yeah, a little bit. Your light's harsh there. That's better.
Yeah, that's better. All right, so they're the timeline ones. There you go. I do want to thank a couple of other supporters on the YouTube chat for supporting the show right now. Tanto, as well as Rick Johnson, really do appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Again, you want to join the Fantasy Basketball League, holler at us on Twitter. I'll get you in there.
So one thing I want to talk about in terms of when you're looking at Cam Johnson, Ty Jerome, Dave, you had a piece on Brightside. Look, I actually am helping you promote that site that talked about Monty Williams wanting to have a 10-man rotation. I believe that was you, Dave.
That was me.
So I think it's interesting that there's enough talent here to have a 10-man rotation. We're not used to that, to have a legit 10-man rotation, but it sounds like based on week one, Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson have proven that they deserve a spot in there. So really, it looks like there's one spot left that this group is battling for to play regular minutes.
So you've got the five. I'm assuming the 5 starters, but also assuming the top 3 bench guys. So between there's 8 guys for sure that are going to play as long as they're healthy. You've got Ricky Rubio, Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre Jr., Dario Saric, and DeAndre Ayton as the 5 starters in my book. It's possible Bridges beats out Oubre, but I don't see it happening. And then coming off the bench for sure every night, Tyler Johnson. God, they love Tyler Johnson. And anybody who watched that YouTube video of my interview with Tyler, you'd fall in love with him and want him on your court too. But so Tyler, Mikal Bridges, and Aaron Baines, right? So that's 8 guys. If Monty wants to go 10 regular, he might not be talking about the same 10 every game, the same last 2. But we haven't talked about Frank yet. Frank's the only really proven can stretch the floor as a big man guy, not named Dario Saric out there. So, and Aaron Baines on small volume can shoot threes, but he's not going to be a big volume guy. So I think Frank is going to end up getting minutes. And so that leaves one spot. And the one spot between Ty Jerome and Cam Johnson probably depends on the matchups. You might see a Sheck Diallo out there depending on matchups. So I think that 10th spot is kind of a rotating one. But it is interesting that they really do like the rookies that much.
Yeah,
I like Sheck Diallo. I think that he's gonna play. To your point, I think there's a good chance that Sheck really plays out Frank Kaminsky for some minutes, honestly.
I wouldn't mind that either, but the Suns, I think it depends on how the offense develops, right? So if they're really reliant on the big men clearing out a little bit of room and stretching the floor, then Sheck Diallo is not going to play much. But if they're looking for activity and hustle and they don't mind clogging up the paint a little bit, then Sheck can be out there. So it just depends on what they're reliant on for their offense to be successful.
Well, I think to your point, too, it's going to rely on matchups. I mean, I could see nights where Frank doesn't play a lot, if in particular, if that 3 isn't falling and they're playing a more physical 4 on the other team. I mean, there's not a lot of nights that happens in the NBA, but I read a piece from, I think it was Michael Pina over on SB Nation talking about kind of laying out his argument for how DeAndre Ayton could grow in year 2 and also how he could make sense as a power forward. And reading through it, I started to go, I could buy some more minutes of depending on the matchup of Ayton at power forward, because he very much could dominate some of these smaller, basically wing guys that these teams are jamming in there as in this positionless world where instead of buying into what the trend is, you go the opposite direction and you force teams to have to deal with a physical beast in DeAndre Ayton going up against lesser 4s with Aaron Baines potentially taking care of their center. It actually made a lot of sense. It was intriguing to read, and I at least hope they experiment with it based off of what we talked about in James Jones's comments last week.
Yeah, that's interesting with James talking about that. I don't see Monty Williams being that kind of experimenter, but we'll find out, won't we? I mean, Monty's pretty traditional. Historically, he's a pretty traditional head coach. He likes the point guard. He likes all the positions being the old school types. I'm not sure if we'll see 5, 6, 7 guys out there, and I'm not sure we'll see a lot of bigs out there at once. And I mean, they might experiment, like against a Sixers team that has Al Horford at power forward and Joel Embiid in the middle, for sure. They'd have to play, the two big guys together, but I'm not really convinced. I got to see it to believe it.
You just said Monty's more of a traditional guy. Well, if he's a traditional guy, Dario Saric isn't your traditional power forward. Somebody more built like DeAndre Ayton is more of a traditional power
I'm not
forward.
talking 90s traditional. I'm talking where the power forward can do a little bit of stretch, but also
more conventional as of today's game than traditional as of the 90s. All right, I get where you're going. I thought I caught you in something. I go but I did not. I did not. So
no.
So Dave, tell me what did you take out of training camp with Monty specifically? I mean, as we brought up on the show, we don't really know exactly what he's going to do. We've seen his head coaching style, but that was a long time ago. We've seen him as an assistant coach, but did you get any takeaways at all from what you've seen out of Monty at training camp?
No, we don't get any view into actually what they're running. We really don't. The first thing we'll see a little bit of is at the open scrimmage on Sunday, but that's really just going to be a walkthrough as well. So I'm not sure we'll see anything until a couple of preseason games in. I'm really curious. Monty historically has been more interested in efficient offense than he is than fast offense. And I'm not sure he thinks leading the league in threes is a good idea. So I'm really curious. I have a feeling it's going to be a more conservative offense than fans are going to want, but it'll be fairly efficient. And then hopefully he'll be able to mix and match on defense enough to be able to make the defense effective. So we're not going to see I don't think we're going to see the Suns leading the league in pace. I don't think we're going to see them leading even in top 5 on threes. I really see the Suns just being more methodical, not slow, but probably middle to bottom third on pace. That's my guess, but I really don't know. We haven't seen anything at all. He just seems like more of a laid back, detail oriented, but quieter kind of leader that isn't going to say push constantly. He's going to want to see these guys set up an offense and execute it.
It sounded based on his comments that whatever system they're putting in, it was a little mentally taxing on some of these guys as they were exhausted physically and mentally by the end of the week.
Somebody is mentally taxing over 3 straight days and then asking them to execute it. We've heard that for 5 straight years too. Is this new scheme is tough to pick up, and then by December we're going to have we're scaling back the offense and defense because they're too complicated.
To be fair, under Earl Watson, they were just like, there's no system. This is very mentally taxing because we don't get why this is the case.
So Tyler Johnson, he spoke highly so far, it seems like, of Monty. I thought that his comment, you guys kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but saying how the huddles were so quiet last year and that, this year, essentially paraphrasing, they aren't going to be. And I was just thinking, you haven't been in any huddles this year. Where is he getting this from?
Hey, they huddle during training camp scrimmages. I've had the privilege of watching some of them in the closed sessions back in the day when I got to be part of the broadcast team. They huddle. They treat it as if they're playing. I mean, it's usually not with Monty Williams or whoever the head coach is. It's usually an assistant coach running each side with the head coach kind of overseeing and floating around. So,
and the take I got for when Tyler was talking about it being dead quiet last year was that first minute or two when the coaches are not in the huddle with the players. Like the coach calls timeout, players walk to the sideline, they sit down in the chairs or whatever, and the coaches huddle in the midcourt and talk about what they're going to do next because that was awful and that's why I called a timeout. There's that 1 or 2 minutes where the coaches are not in the huddle before they get in there and tell the players what to do. That was dead quiet last year, and Tyler wasn't used to that from having years in Miami where they had much more mature players, and the players were trying to commiserate amongst each other first, and then the coaches came in and said what we're doing next. So Tyler's hoping that'll change. He knows he's got some more mature guys around him now that are used to trying to solve their own problems. Basically, what he was saying is these guys, and maybe it was time of the year too. Tyler came in the second half of the year, and the guys were already beaten down on a 80%, losing rate, and they were tired of talking, and they didn't know what to say. I mean, there's still DeAndre. Let's talk about DeAndre Ayton for a minute. He is still pretty oblivious to what's going on. He's just a big kid just playing a game of basketball. And I don't blame Monty saying, that I don't expect Ayton to be a leader. And Devin Booker agreeing and saying, well, I mean, he can lead in his own ways by example and by effort and stuff like that. But DeAndre is still just kind of just hanging, chilling. And with Josh Jackson and then a dejected Devin Booker, I can totally see why they would run out of things to say to each other in huddles before the coaches were ready to lay into them on what they did wrong and then what to do next. And Tyler's hoping that'll change this year. And I can see he's just excited. He's projecting, and I hope that's true.
Well, he was talking about communication behind him on the defensive end as well as a guard, right? So even that's encouraging. And I know, yes, training camp, you tend to be in that kind of mindset more so than 2/3 of the way through a terrible year. But that's encouraging that he feels like they're communicating better on the court as well. So it's good. Look, we're going to hear a lot of things over the next few weeks that sounds really good. I mean, that's just the way training camp, preseason plays out, because right now everybody's 0-0, hope springs eternal, and that's just the way it is. It's the old, and it's cliche now, but the old Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the mouth. Like, when we'll really understand what this team is when they get punched in the mouth the first time this season, when they lose 3 in a row, when they lose, they get blown out in a game. How do they respond? Then I want to know, how is the communication in the huddles? What's the communication like on the defensive end? Those kind of things matter more, obviously, when we get to that point. But right now, it beats the alternative. If they were talking about, well, we need to get better in our communication, it's really quiet out there still, that would be immensely concerning. Right now, this is just kind of what you expect to hear.
Well, let me ask you a question, Dave, just because you're really on the ground level for so many of these games, and you were last year. Oftentimes, it's obviously going to be one of the bigs, the 5 or the 4, that is yelling out on the defensive end, because most of the time it's the guards up there, with people setting screen left, screen right, fight under, go over, that sort of thing. Like, the guard needs the big to be the one communicating that. Like, it just, that's how it works, right? How was DeAndre Ayton last year at yelling out those screens for the guards that were up there at the top of the key?
I wasn't on the court a lot, but I talked to other folks that were. And the takeaway is that depending on his mood and how the game is going for him is whether he's going to talk much on defense or not.
Were the guards getting pissed because guards that run into like really strong screens because no one yelled out screen right?
Well, and think about it. A lot of times, Dragan Bender was the other big.
Right.
And Bender is not a talker either. And Marquise Chris, well, he's a talker, but he's not a talker.
Not an intelligent talker.
Right, he's not a dude who's going to call out where he is defensively. Matt Moore, who came on a few weeks ago, was saying he broke down a lot of the Suns played last year, and what he saw is nobody throwing a really good screen once, except for Quincy Acey a couple of times, and Quincy Acey was on a 10-day. So I think there was a lot of quiet out there on the court as well last year. And Tyler will help that, because Tyler and Ricky, even though they're guards, they'll help demand that the bigs call out where they are. And that's my hope, is that these guys hold each other accountable and you don't let a big be quiet more than a few plays in a row. That's the kind of thing you talk about in timeouts, where if you've given up 3 straight scores, that's when your coach is like, oh, God, timeout. And then the players go to the sideline and they're just waiting for the coach to tell them what to do. This is where Ricky and Tyler and guys like that can jump in there on the big men and say, look, the reason we gave up those scores is because I didn't know where the hell you were on, defensively. You've got to call it out. You can't get away with this. And DeAndre said this week, he's like, yeah, Ricky's been in my ear all week about about this and that. And so as long as things are going okay and guys haven't completely checked out, they will hold DeAndre more accountable. No, he's not a natural defensive talker, but Aaron Baines is. So what's really interesting is that the things that DeAndre is not good at, Aaron Baines is really good at. So it'll be interesting to see if Aaron Baines rubs off on DeAndre a little bit. And the guards expect more of DeAndre because they're getting it from Aaron Baines and they've got it from their prior centers more as well. So we'll see how it goes, but I know DeAndre is not a natural calling out where he is. He said early in the season he would be, and he didn't turn out to be that way. And hopefully this year he'll be required to be better.
Not even just where he is, but a lot of the times when you're guarding the ball handler, you're hyper focused on the ball handler, right? So it's hard to see a screen that's been set to your right and a screen that's been set to your left. Whatever, it's really hard to see that because your eyes.
Absolutely, you're right, Tim. And Tyler Johnson just the other day saying he loves the fact that they're all calling out where they are, not just the big man. You're right, but I was focusing on, you said mostly it's the big man talking. You're right. They're all calling out where they are, and Tyler said that. He said, you're on an island when you're guarding, the really good players. You got Steph, you got Kyrie, and you're out there, and you got to know where your help is, because then you got to know how to adjust and what side to shade on the player you're on. So, yep. Absolutely, everyone's going to have to talk, and so far so good. And we'll see how long it lasts.
Well, look, and Aaron Baines is not going to let DeAndre Ayton slide on things. We've already seen how much of a talker that guy is, and we know that he doesn't put up with anything. So I think that's a big part of why they acquired him, was just to stay on Ayton's backside if he is sliding on those kind of things.
Well, and Darius Saric may not be a totally vocal guy. I don't know. I really don't about him, but he gets in the right place at the right time. He's a really good team defender, even though he's not the fastest or quickest. He's a good team defender. He rotates well, and I would expect that he's got to be pretty good at calling out where he is on being in the right place at the right time. So there's a lot of helpers out there. There's not incredible athletic defenders and the big spots right now. Even though Ayton is super athletic, he doesn't use that defensively that well unless he's the one with the ball right in front of him. He's got a lot to learn, and hopefully Baines, to Greg's point, Baines can help him learn that and require him to learn that. And James Jones even mentioned in the offseason that everybody caused another firestorm. Hey, man, if we need somebody out there in crunch time, it could be Baines out there defensively in crunch time. And that might be that Ayton slides to power forward in those moments, or that Ayton sits and watches from the sideline because Baines is doing the job that the center's supposed to be doing and Ayton's not. Of course, if Ayton's at 25 points and 12 rebounds, he's not going to get pulled for a guy who call out a couple of defensive possessions better. But if Ayton's having an otherwise kind of floaty game where he's just kind of there, and I wouldn't be surprised if Monty goes, let's get Aaron in there for a couple of minutes and see what happens.
So watching on YouTube right now, do us a big favor, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help with the YouTube algorithms. Suns have 3 preseason games coming up this week, a little bit wild still to me. So on Tuesday, they take on the Timberwolves. On Thursday,
in Phoenix, and I'll be there.
On Thursday, they're on the road against the Kings, and then they play in Phoenix again on Saturday against the Portland Trailblazers.
It's crazy. They only play 4 preseason games, and 3 of them are this week. The regular season is right around the corner, people.
Yeah, the regular season is very close. Yeah.
What are you guys going to be watching for in preseason?
No injuries. I mean, and what is Monty's system look like? And then when we talked about that end of the rotation too, is who does it look like is gaining favor with Monty in those cases? I mean, really, you're not going to glean a lot from this. We're not all of a sudden going to go, oh, that's exactly what Monty Williams is going to do. It's a feeling out process in preseason. Usually, it's pretty ugly basketball in general. So I'm just no major injuries, which we still need to talk about that portion of training camp before we leave here, and then
The lingering,
just starting to get a feel for the system and the rotation.
Yeah, I think what'll be important to look for, because we noticed it in prior years, is the preseason games looked really ragtag, and the guys looked like they didn't know what they were doing a lot of the times. And so you needed someone like a TJ Warren to score 30 points or whatever, just to distract the fans. But they didn't look like they knew what they were doing much in prior years. And so I'm looking forward to seeing if these guys look like they know what they're doing. As units, as substitution patterns and things like that, who plays well together, who looks like they know what's going on. That's really important to me. Even though we might not see the extremes of the offense in preseason, it's not going to be like the Cardinals where you saw none of the offense in preseason, and now they're paying for it because they didn't practice it well. Monty's too grown up for that. Monty is going to have them practice their actual offense. They might run a little slow in preseason. I would not be surprised if we're worried about the pace they're going to play at, because in preseason, Monty's going to be wanting them to execute and not free think, because you free think a lot better when you know the play you're supposed to be running. And so he's got to get them to know the plays first, and then they can free think and deviate off of that, instead of just break down every time and go one-on-one or pick and roll. If we see tons of breakdown, 10 seconds left in the clock, pick and rolls, then we know their offense isn't running very well. So that's what I'm looking for.
Tim, are you looking for anything in preseason, or are you just going to blankly stare at us there?
I was just going to blankly stare. I was going to see if anybody picked up the slack if I didn't say anything. No, I mean,
yeah, because Dave and I have a problem talking on this show. That's the issue here.
I want to see what the end of the bench point guard rotation looks like from the beginning of preseason. It's only 4 games, whatever, but from the beginning of preseason to the end of the end of the preseason, do we see one of those point guards, one of the 6 point guards that the Suns have on the roster, is starting to gain favor in terms of minutes? And then maybe we can make some predictions heading into the actual season about what we're going to see. Is Elie Okobo getting any run out there at all? That's something I'm really interested in. Shaq Diallo, I know we talked about Frank Kaminsky a little bit, and whether or not Shaq Diallo is going to have much of a role with Frank Kaminsky out there. I'm really interested to see if which one of those styles of players is more beneficial for this team. Frank Kaminsky is a good player who can shoot. He doesn't really do a lot else. Sometimes having an energy big out there like a Shaq Diallo can be really beneficial. So those are some of the things. Talking about some of the rotations with some of the other guards, with Devin Booker, Tyler Johnson, Ricky Rubio. Who's playing with who out there in the backcourt? Are we going to see a Tyler Johnson with one of those other point guards, or are we going to see a Ricky Rubio perhaps more with the Tyler Johnson? I'm really curious about some of those.
Yeah, that's I'm actually looking forward to that too. I really think their perfect world. This is me totally projecting onto Monty Williams and his coaching staff, so I could be totally wrong. But I really think the perfect world is that Tyler Johnson is Devin Booker's backup, who happens to play a little bit of point if they're going to go Mikal Bridges and Oubre together when Booker's on the bench. I don't think Tyler is going to play a lot with Devin, but I could see Tyler playing a lot with Ty Jerome and possibly with Ricky Rubio, depending on how they stagger Booker and Rubio. So that'll be interesting. We're not going to see a real stagger in preseason. I doubt we ever see Rubio and Booker not playing together in preseason, because there's no point on running these guys ragged like we already talked about. But I think in the regular season, they're probably hoping that Tyler Johnson looks pretty good next to Ricky Rubio and Ty Jerome as that backup backcourt.
What another thing I'm interested in quickly here is Ricky Rubio and DeAndre Ayton. Do they already have some chemistry? Because Rubio was talking about how he's been studying tape of his teammates and trying to figure out ways he can set them up, and I would love to see just a little chemistry build between those two, because I think it'll be immensely important for Ayton's growth in year 2 to have them have good chemistry.
I'm looking forward to Ricky Rubio demanding that DeAndre Ayton be in the right spot on rolls and rolls to the basket and all that with his passes. Ayton's going to have some, I can't believe that pass just came in. He was joking about it the other day. I don't know if you guys watched that little video I took of his interview. He was talking about how Ricky in their first 5-on-5 got a lot of passes right at Ayton, and Ayton was not expecting them to get through all those players to him. So there's going to be a learning curve on that. But Ayton does have really good hands on the catch and really good finishing ability, really good body control. I can see him being an incredibly effective pick and roll finisher in the league if he knows when to take off. When it's Devin, you want to slip the screen really fast. But when it's Isaiah Canaan, he was talking about this early in the season last year. When it's Isaiah Canaan, you got to hold the pick a little bit longer, hold the screen a little bit longer so Isaiah can get around it before rolling. And so he said every player is different on when they want you to roll and when they want you to stay and hold the screen. So I wonder how Ricky Rubio is with that and how good a chemistry they have. But that's the key on pick and rolling, I think, is the big man knowing when to leave the screen and start his move. And we'll have to see how that goes between those two, because Ricky Rubio is great as a pick and roll setter.
Ayton doesn't slip screens a lot, right?
Well,
I'm trying to think last year.
He doesn't set really good screens either. So I think he's just got timing issues on when to go, because he wasn't great. I mean, he's pretty good at setting screens, but he wasn't great at setting screens. And yet he wouldn't also slip immediately before the defender got there to confuse the defense. No, you're right, Tim. But I think a lot of that was him being kind of sticking himself in no man's land.
Well, the follow-up question to that, though, would be, do you want DeAndre Ayton slipping screens? Like, is stylistically, is that a strong suit for him? I'm not sure that it is, but
well, if you want him to get a head of steam toward the basket, he may have to. I don't know how his first step is, but once he gets a head of steam, man, he can finish really good. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see how good his chemistry is too with Rubio.
All right, guys. Anything else you want to go over?
The injury. You've got the lingering Kelly Oubre and Mikal Bridges. That was interesting. They didn't bring it up, obviously, at media day. We were all wondering who's really secretly injured that'll just suddenly not play in training camp. Turns out it's the two small forwards we've been talking about the Suns wanted to keep. Kelly Oubre with a discomfort in his hand. He's wearing a brace. And Mikal Bridges with discomfort in his knee. Neither of those appear to be something you want to have surgery on, or otherwise they would have probably just sucked it up and done the surgery. So it looks like it's just a lingering thing, and we'll see how long it goes. But it is disappointing that those two couldn't play at all in training camp.
Look, the term discomfort worries me because they're not being specific. And usually when you're not specific about what's going on with a guy is because either A, you're not 100% sure what's going on with him, or B, it's something that could cause more alarm than anything if you said specifically what's going on. And that worries me immensely, especially with a new training staff here and the weird we're working with Exos, and then all of a sudden, well, that disappeared, and well, we have this training staff that we put together. Like, that worries me because this is a whole new group.
But on the other side of it, Greg, Aaron Baines got smacked in the nose. I forget how, but he had a big bloody kind of mark on his nose at the end of practice on Thursday. Mm-hmm. And he joked with the media going, has Monty told you whether I'm playing on Friday or not in practice? And Aaron Baines was kept out of practice just because his nose got hit. If it was a regular season, he wouldn't have been held out. So it's also possible that they're just in abundance of caution right now.
Did he refer to it as nose discomfort when he talked about what happened to Baines?
It's pretty obvious there was a little nose discomfort from the blood.
I am just worried because it came out of nowhere. It's very vague, and they didn't even. It wasn't like they played in the morning walkthroughs and did this and then They sat out the afternoon practice. They were on the shelf for the entirety of training camp, which we talked about it going into this was the one thing that you really couldn't have in training camp and preseason was anybody missing significant time, and now you have your two top small forwards missing all of training camp when you install most of that system. Whether or not it's a serious injury, it's a major setback because now it's going to take them even longer to get acclimated to what Monty Williams wants to do with this. So it's a setback for a team that can't afford these if they want to accomplish anything of value this year.
Going down that road with you, Greg, I think there is a lot of possibility here that these are things. Now that I said, they haven't had surgery yet, so they must not be serious. I could totally see them limping through the week to get acclimated to the play calls, like going through the morning practices, at least observing and seeing how Monty's schemes work, and then doing surgery like we might get an announcement today, tomorrow, Monday, whatever, that one of them had some kind of minor surgery to clean up some minor debris. I wouldn't be surprised. You're right, Greg. This could be something they were just waiting out the week to actually do something more serious about. But if we don't hear of something in the next couple of days on some more serious, resolution of their injuries, I would expect they'd eventually be back.
Yeah. Serene Eclipse. Serene Eclipse. I'm sure that's an actual name in the chat. It says Cam Johnson will pick up the slack, and I actually think that there's a good point to be made there. That's why you draft a guy like Cam Johnson that has experience, granted college, but played in entirety in college as a mature guy, so he can come in if you have this kind of situation and pick up some of that slack. So this is exactly why you do it. Otherwise, if you'd went with the method that the team had gone with before, you'd be relying on some 19-year-old to try to pick up that slack now. So
Right.
So I think that's a very, very valid point there.
All right, guys. Well, the next time we talk will be Wednesday. We would have seen at least one preseason game since then, plus the open practice. Dave, I'm assuming you're going to be there. Greg, are you going to be at the open practice?
It depends. Probably not.
Probably not. Don't lie to us. Just say no.
I don't know. Would I like to be? Yes. Will I be? Most likely not.
I'll definitely be at the open practice on Sunday and at the preseason game on Tuesday. But then we can talk about this Wednesday. I am out next weekend because I'll be up in Pine Top for the weekend. So we'll have to talk Wednesday for sure about observations from the first two public displays of the Suns team.
Hey, by the way, real quick before we get out of here, congratulations to our friend of the pod, John Bloom, who this week it was announced that he was being replaced as the voice of the Northern Arizona Suns, and then a day later it came out that he will actually be doing upwards of 25 Suns games on the radio this year, as the Hall of Famer Al McCoy is going to take some road games off. So very excited for John Bloom. Not a harder working man in the business, not a nicer man, and not a better talented guy to step in to that position. So very excited to see what he does with filling in for Al McCoy this year.
Yeah, I'm real happy for Bloomer as well. Good job, John.
And he's just like a genuinely good dude.
Yep.
Yeah, he is.
We'll have him on the show to talk about the new spot sometime soon.
When he's really allowed to talk about it. I love it how he gave credit to the reporter for having the scoop when I'm like, isn't it really technically you with the scoop, John?
John's known for a while.
Was he not the first to know about this?
By the way, also, our boy Rhett Reese, new movie coming out next week. You got Zombieland 2. So go out there and support Rhett. We'll get him on the show soon too. So if we're going to do some just drops.
We get him turned around on this team. He's pretty disappointed with the offseason.
That makes it more entertaining though. So go watch Rhett's movie as well. Let's help everybody out and make this a big community.
So, and on that note, we will be back doing this live. If you're listening on the podcast, you can always join us on the YouTube. That is going to be this Wednesday, 7 o'clock Arizona time. Join us on YouTube for a live version of the show where we'll actually get to dissect something we've seen that the Suns do on the court, which is really exciting.
Woohoo, basketball!
Yay!